There are some chapters of Scripture that just have a verse in them that provides so much comfort. For Psalm 46, I think some of the most comforting words there is, "Be still and know that I am God." That's a great reminder for us on the Sabbath, that we take time to pause, to realize that we serve a God who controls all things, and in the good times and the bad times, He is with us. The third verse in chapter 33 is, God has promised that the people will inherit the land that is promised to them, and it is a land filled with milk and honey. And I'm sure that must have been so comforting, considering their situation in the desert and leaving captivity. And if there is one way to sum up the importance and meaning of Exodus 33, it's the presence of God. And we know that God is upset with the people. He calls them stiff-necked, and that He would not continue with them because He might decide to deal with their sinful ways. But Moses petitions God, "You got to come with us. Show us the way." And God says, "Okay." And we know that we're just coming out of chapters 20 and 24. God has made a covenant with the people at Mount Sinai. And we see in this chapter God's promises, God's renewal and recommitment, how He's guaranteed His presence when they come to the tent of the meeting, and that there's a cloud that comes, and the people know when Moses is going there and the presence of the Lord is there. And Moses has a bold request of God. "God, let me see Thy glory. Let me see Your face. Let me know all there is to know about You." God says that's not possible. A human could not see Me and survive it. But God does commit to letting Moses see some of Him as he passes by. And it gets to that question of, is it better to see something visually that is there, or is it better to hear it and to feel it? We have the beauty that we have all these pages before us and God's speaking to us. We know what it feels like to have God dwelling within us, and that when we have prayed and see an outcome that only God could provide, it makes it feel like hearing is actually better than seeing. And how beautiful the intimate relationship that Moses has with God. God has told Moses His name. He says He knows Moses by his name. And that God is a God who shows mercy and is gracious. And we see a steadfast love and commitment that started in Genesis, continues through Exodus, all the way through the rest of the Bible. And to know that that continues to be the God that we serve today and all of the tomorrows to come. In a world where everything changes, where stuff changes, where places change, where things get old and are torn down, or something replaces it, or even with people, our closest friends and family, we're not capable of going a lifetime without disappointing another person, even if that's the last thing we want to do. But we see a God that never changes. And Moses does want to see the full nature of God. He wants to see all that God has to offer and who He is. And in this seeking more, I think it's human nature. Human nature always wants more. But Moses is wanting it in an appropriate way. But not only is it impossible for a human to stand and face to face with God in our earthly bodies, it's more than that. God continues to reveal new things as we seek him out. This is a story of the journey is as important as the destination. We all look forward to our destination, but it's the seeking out of God more, to know him better, to know him in a way that allows us to be transformed into people that we may not have been capable of being otherwise. And in his time, God does continue to reveal himself more and more to us, his personal nature. And while there's always a mystery of God, it is in the seeking that we get to know ourselves, that we get to know God, and that we can understand better the journey that we have before us. In these pages of Exodus, we learn that God is consistent, God is love, God is mercy, God is power, and he knows each of us by name. That's another theme that runs through Jeremiah. It's a theme that we see in the New Testament with Jesus. Not only can we have a relationship with God, he knows us before we reach out to him. And what a beautiful thing to be able to look at and say, of all the things and everything that changes, God does not. And that we can, even though maybe not visibly seen right now, we can know through his words of Scripture, through his comfort that he puts on our hearts, through the changes we see in others, that this is a God of love, a God of mercy, a God of tenderness, a God of righteousness. And it's not just who God was to Moses in Exodus. It's the most consistent and truthful thing there is in the world. And that's where our hope comes from. Because while we may anticipate the near future and what's to come, it's truly in God's hands. And God can do things so far beyond our imagination. All that is required of us is to seek, to obey, and to have a faith strong enough for endless possibilities. So it is comforting to know that God, who provided and promised of land of milk and honey, is a God that's slow to anger and a God that forgives. When Jonah went to Nineveh against his will, he preached a 5-word Hebrew sermon to the people. The people repented. The cattle repented. That instance caused 100 years of prosperity for that area. God can do so much with just a little. So imagine if we do more than a little, and we do all we can. We may not be able to know God in all his glory, but we will get better glimpses of him as he passes through our world, and to know that his presence is never ending. That's the good news this morning. Thank you.